Everybody could take their seats. Thank you. I'm going to call House Bill 183. I think Secretary Lopez is here and you have a panel. Come on up. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Thank
you so much for your flexibility. Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the House Appropriations Committee. My name is Rafael Lopez, and I serve as the Secretary of the Department of Human Services. We respectfully request your favorable report of HB 183. We have submitted amendments to this departmental bill to Committee Council, and you should have those in front of you. I'd like to spend a moment to sort of lift up a couple of the most significant items before you. We are driven by 12 core values that represent the Moore-Miller administration values. Among these are moving urgently, being data-driven and heart-led, and being innovative. These three values underscore how we approached HB 183. With your partnership, 500,000 Maryland children will be fed every summer when they're not in school. We are going to leverage $69 million in federal funds per year to do it, no longer leaving federal dollars on the table for which Marylanders are eligible. Together, we will help families feed their children in every single jurisdiction across Maryland, beginning in June of this year. When the state summer SNAP program launched in 2019, we served 3,923 children in 4 jurisdictions. During the summer of 2023, we served 90,571 children in 14 jurisdictions. The reason not all jurisdictions opted in to summer SNAP is due to a lack of funds and bureaucratic barriers in the opt-in process. By innovatively and seamlessly implementing the new federal summer EBT program, we will help feed 500,000 children across Maryland in every single one of its jurisdictions. DHS is currently required by state law to distribute summer food benefits on a different schedule than the disbursement of federal funds. This doesn't make sense as we try to make things simple and seamless for the children and families in whose names we serve. It shouldn't be the burden of Marylanders to navigate government bureaucracy to figure out how to get the help they need when they need it. It's on us to make it simple and seamless for them. Our proposed amendments are necessary to integrate the state summer SNAP program with the federal summer EBT program, which will enable Maryland to help feed 500,000 children. We will provide benefits to all children eligible for free and price-reduced school meals, including those not enrolled in SNAP. Based on our work issuing PEBT benefits, approximately 60% of the children receiving school meals are not enrolled in SNAP. Federal funds will cover all of the costs of food benefits and half of the administrative costs. By investing $9 million in state general funds for our share of program administration, Maryland will receive from the federal government $9 million in administrative costs and $60 million for food benefits. This investment is proposed in Governor Moore's budget as a $78 million investment in the children and families of Maryland. Responsibly investing $9 million to get $69 million innovatively leverages benefits for which Marylanders are currently eligible. Feeding 5 times more children during the summer for a total of 500,000 children in every single jurisdiction, eliminating inefficient funding coordination with local jurisdictions that's proven to be a barrier, and making it seamless for families simply makes sense. We are fully aware that ending childhood poverty in Maryland does not happen overnight, or will it? But the structural challenges that have plagued Maryland for years are real. And that shouldn't stop us from seeking creative solutions to make sure every single lever we pull helps us make sure children and families get connected to the resources and the help they need to thrive. We respectfully request your favorable consideration of this bill and the amendments, and thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to answer your questions now.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. You know, this bill really meets the core values of this committee and this legislature.
Absolutely.
But it is difficult given the fact that we've not heard any sort of resolution of our commitments we've already made. Things like concentration of poverty grants, community schools would serve these same populations. So I think it's something we're gonna have to think about, right? Like, this meets our values, but so do all these other things, and we don't have any solutions yet from this administration on how to fund these long term. And yet we have bills in funding new things that, well, we haven't really funded the other things. So I don't know if you can comment on that or.
Sure, happy to. I'll speak to what I know and certainly can get back to you on what I don't know. So I can't speak to all of the various programs in terms of decisions that have previously been made prior to our administration coming into office. What I can speak to is what this opportunity affords for Marylanders in terms of creating a simple and seamless program. So, for example, it is clear as we dove into how the Summer SNAP program was funded that very few jurisdictions were able to jump in because of funding limitations. Number two, we understood that making it easier to participate was one of the goals that we clearly saw from when the legislature implemented the bill in 2019. We took a look at the data at each of the jurisdictions, what household composition looked like, and the best way to serve all Maryland jurisdictions and all the children that we could possibly help. This would actually take us in that step. We would not run a different brand new program. We'd actually integrate them. We would leverage your legislature's investment in Maryland's children and make sure we can grow it by leveraging additional federal dollars. So we're not launching a brand new program. We're actually growing your original investment in Maryland's children and making sure all 24 jurisdictions have the benefit of using federal funds. As of right now, we only had 14 jurisdictions and serving 90,000 children. From our perspective, serving 500,000 and covering all 24 jurisdictions makes more sense.
I mean, I hear you and you're speaking to the choir, right? I promise you, this committee loves this bill. We also love all the programs that we've already passed, and this increases funding by $4 or $5 million at a time when we haven't come up with real resolution. And I know this isn't your charge from your administration to solve the long-term problems and all the great things that we've already passed, but we do need to do that, and you are part of this administration. So while we love this bill, we also love concentration of poverty grants and childcare scholarships that we've seen cut in this budget. And so there's a disconnect there a little bit. I'm going to let you off the hook on it, but I'll just kind of leave it there. Delegate Grace.
Chairman, I'm going to put you back on the hook.
That's fine. I'm happy to be on the hook, sir. Go for it.
Yeah, I apologize. You're the first person from the administration coming in, and I can only speak, from the minority's perspective in this. And one of the exercises that at least I took on, since the budget was presented to us last week, was adding up. And now it's not entirely on the administration because a lot of these new costs are from legislation that was passed in the past. However, we can certainly address that through the BRFA. But it's no surprise. I think the administration's projected budget shortfall in FY29 is $3.5 billion. And I think DLS is a little bit less than that. I think they said it was around $3 billion. Have you, is there any discussion in the administration about, because right now we're not, from our perspective, at least from my perspective, I don't see where we're dealing with the structural deficit this year. And I think using the term fiscal cliff is actually very appropriate because we're getting closer to that cliff and we're not doing anything to slow down the speed at which we're getting there, and also preventing us from falling over that cliff. Is there any concern, at least from what you've heard from the administration, that we're doing anything to help slow this impending thing down? Because I certainly don't want to be a lemming and hop over the cliff.
Well, I guess similar to the way I responded to Chairman Barnes, I'll speak to what where I'm a subject matter expert, I will say, and certainly on behalf of the administration, speak to the governor's commitment to be fiscally responsible. And so I'm going to speak from the perspective of the leader of the Department of Human Services. So, and how we're approaching being creative and innovative with both state general funds and federal funds. It was stunning to me to come into this role and to understand that a directive had been given to staff to not apply for federal grants or to leverage federal money. That makes no sense, especially when we can actually serve more people across Maryland. It was stunning to me to come in and to find deeply siloed paper processes, green screens, and ways of managing the department that did not deliver results for the people of Maryland in the way in which it should. We looked at our budget, which is, by the way, almost 75% funded by the federal government, exactly 73.6 in last year's budget, to better understand where we can create better efficiencies and run over a $4 billion budget with greater discipline than the one we inherited. And so those particular tasks and looking at DHS's budget, we have scoured very clearly where there are inefficiencies and try to better understand how we can make a down payment and investment in this administration to leave Maryland better off than we found it. That fiscal responsibility and the discipline with which we're using this is the same discipline we're approaching to leveraging the Summer SNAP program that was started in 2019. When you look at the way in which to better grow these kinds of efforts, better leverage existing federal dollars by moving money around the budget, that is what we have done at DHS. And that is what is included in the governor's budget proposal for this particular item.
Okay, and moving forward, now this isn't directed at you. This is sort of, I want to set the tone moving
Certainly.
forward in session
Certainly.
for anyone else, you know, from the administration who's
Certainly.
going to present. And I hope the second floor is listening in, and I'm sure they are. And, you know, we certainly like the idea of no tax increases. We also like the idea of, at least on paper, it looks like we're spending less, even though we're not. We're actually spending over $1 billion more in new programs. And this is an example where we're spending more in an existing program. We're punting this year. And, you know, from a fiscal perspective and a fiscal responsibility perspective, we're looking at about $5 million that we're adding to the fiscal cliff. And we're only cutting maybe 5 or 6 line items in the budget. And that's the only cuts that we're taking. When I say cuts, we're talking about spending less than we did in FY 24. So I hope that, you know, anyone coming in the future to present, we're going to have similar questions moving forward. We have to start doing something now to curb spending. And, you know, obviously we have 3 options, you know, curb spending, add revenue, or do a combination of both. And right now this budget doesn't do any of those 3 things. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I think it's fair to say Delegate Grice and I might have different solutions. My solution would be, let's do something that we can pass this bill, but we'll leave that there. Delegate Stanko.
This is just more of a technical question.
Sure.
Reading the fiscal note and the bill, this makes it where it's mandated to spend. Why couldn't the governor make it a priority for himself and put it in the budget without it being mandated?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
So the adjustment here is that it's a mandated increase. Why wouldn't it, why is it a shall versus a may, to make it simple?
So let me give the example of how combining the existing Maryland Summer SNAP program to leverage federal dollars would work. That I can speak to directly.
Okay.
And actually I should say also, this federal benefit has come to pass very quickly. We got final federal rules from the United States Department of Agriculture on December 29th. So we've been fast and furious trying to make sure we understand what we are eligible to receive, how we can operate a program and actually do something by June 1 of this year. Number 1. Number 2, on the issue of how the calculations worked about the administrative share of costs, which is important around the fiscal note. They approximated approximately 30% of costs to administrative burden, and it's a 50-50% required match. So the idea here was to leverage an existing investment that was already being made by the state general fund to add another source of state general funds to leverage to get the 18 million. That's the cost to run the program administratively for the state of Maryland, in order to be able to draw down the 69 million. So total. So ultimately, that's the way we approach this, which is that if we want to participate as a state in being able to serve 500,000 children in every single jurisdiction, there's a requirement for a 50-50 match between the state of Maryland and the federal government. That's the way in which we approach this.
Okay.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for your service.
Certainly.
You're doing a great job. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Kenzie Funk. Have a great day, sir.
You as well.
Thank you, Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Chang and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kenzie Funk, and I am here on behalf of Strong Schools Maryland as a policy associate in strong support of House Bill 183. We appreciate Delegate Wilkins for creating a bill that solidifies necessary changes to the current Summer SNAP for Children program. The Summer SNAP for Children Act passed in 2019 expanded the SNAP program to address summer needs of Maryland students. It ensures an additional $30 deposit to cards per child every month from June to August. Nevertheless, discussions during session reduced the initially suggested $2 million in funding for programming to just $200,000. Currently, the Summer SNAP program faces constraints in extending its outreach. Despite its success in significantly reducing childhood food insecurity, the program faces limitations in serving a larger and growing student population and hiring the essential staff for such an expansion. This constriction means that children are left without access to regularly scheduled school meals or the supplemental deposit during the summer months, which is a quarter of the whole year. This causes real harm as food security is absolutely necessary for children's psychological well-being, physical health, and academic ability as it negatively impacts concentration, mood, and memory. Strong Schools Maryland firmly believes in ensuring food security for all children in Maryland. The proposed House Bill 183 with increased funding will substantially boost the SNAP summer program's capacity, allowing for more children to receive these supplements. With 54% of students, Maryland students, currently relying on free or reduced price meals during the school year, House Bill 183 allows the SNAP summer program to more effectively meet the needs of these students during the summer months. Just because school is out of session does not mean that the needs of our student population disappear. Maryland students deserve Maryland support so that they can all reach their fullest potential. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 183.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Thank you for your great work, Strong Schools Maryland. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 183. Now move to House Bill 9, Delegate Crosby. If you have a panel, you can certainly bring them up. I see Ann Gawthrop here from State Pensions and Lisa Jordan has signed up.
I think it's just, and I think Lisa's still in
Okay.
another committee, but good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, Delegate Brian Crosby here to present House Bill 9 titled State Retirement and Pension System Forfeiture of Benefits and to respectfully ask for a favorable opinion. This is an extremely narrow and tailored bill. It requires that state employees who are convicted of rape or plead guilty to rape forfeit their pension benefits, and that must have been committed during the course of the employee's duties. This bill includes safeguards against unintended consequences that may cause harm to the state or to the family members of public employees of the public employee who is affected. For example, affected spouses and children and other dependents may file a claim to restore partial payment to the court, and the court has the discretion to provide some or all of the forfeited benefits back to the family. In addition, forfeiture may not impair or alter an existing divorce decree or alimony or child support order. And finally, it is important to note that the employees would have their full benefits restored upon the overturning of a conviction. To running afoul of existing case law, this bill is prospective, and I ask for a favorable report.
Great. And Ann, are you here?
I
just
try.
For technical expertise or?
We're not taking any position on the bill, just to answer any questions.
Moral support, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
I understand, Mr. Vice Chair. Any questions for Vice Chair, Bill Sponsor, Delegate Ruff?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question, Delegate Crosby. Thank you for your presentation. I see that this applies to folks who have pled nolo contendere to this plea, to this crime. And considering that, number one, the state would have to agree to that type of a plea, and in those situations, which are very rare, the state is essentially admitting they don't have very strong evidence, or they would more than likely proceed with the prosecution of that case. So can you talk a little bit about why there is a carve out for a nolo plea for this bill?
Well, I think that and I'm not a practicing attorney, so I apologize. While I do have my law license, this is not my forte, but I do think we were trying to wrap everything up, or any instance where an individual would have pled to the crime of rape. So if it needs to be amended out, no issues with that. But frankly, we were just trying to embrace everything to encompass any type of conviction or plea.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Ruff, appreciate the question. That was actually one of my questions, but the other, when we say public employees, this, and just clarifying question, this includes law enforcement, police, correctional officers, correct?
It does. So it's anyone who falls under the state pension plan minus us. We have significantly more crimes that we would forfeit our pension for.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just kind of wonder why you're just going after rape, or is this kind of the camel's nose under the tent for folks later on, you know, that we're going to add on other crimes?
I mean, I haven't brought any other
Well,
bill
no, I
with the crime,
understand,
but
but you
yeah, I
gotta
mean,
get it passed first. and then
for sure.
Next year. or, you
I
know.
would probably contend that it's either this or murder are the most serious of crimes. And so that is why, I mean, we brought a very specifically narrowed bill. There
Well,
was an incident which actually didn't result. It wouldn't have technically fallen under the bill, but I mean, that's where it stems from.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know I'm not in judiciary, but you know, I'm learning, I'm trying.
Delegate, thank you for the bill.
Yep.
That concludes the bill hearing.
Thank you.
House Bill 204, Delegate Tar, and Delegate, I think we did pass this bill last year. So if you have a panel, you can bring them up, but
We did. I don't believe so. I don't believe anyone's here for it.
okay, great.
But thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Talia Attar here asking you to pass again House Bill 204, which requires training for coaches in schools, but specifically mental health training. So with that, I ask for a favorable report. And I do want to note one more thing, that the fiscal note says there's a minimal, if any, impact. Thank you.
There, thank you. And I should say that we are joined by our colleagues from Ways and Means, Delegates Miller, Vogel, and Weibel. So welcome our colleagues from Ways and Means, and you did great, Delegate.
Thank
Put in
you.
good stead to pass again this year with that.
Thank you.
So that concludes the bill hearing.
Thank you.
House Bill 75, Delegate Ebersol. And as always, if you have a panel, you feel free to bring them up.
I think there are some people testifying in favor, but I didn't bring them, okay? Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and austere members of the House Appropriations Committee. I'm Eric Ebersol, and I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 75, which is a bill that is called Teacher Development and Retention Program redefinition. It addresses the Teacher Shortage Act that we passed last year, House Bill 1219 in 2023. That bill had a number of things in it that sought to encourage people into the teaching profession. In particular, parts of it were aimed toward attracting a more diverse and socioeconomically diverse population into the teaching profession, as we need them to reflect the students that actually exist in our public schools. One part of that was a wide-ranging program the governor suggested that draws equally the teaching training program with other professions. Many people, when they are being trained, do an internship, and during their internship, they receive a stipend, medical profession being an excellent example of that, to help them stay alive while they're learning on the job. That has never been the case for internships for teachers, or as we often called them, student teachers. They were required to pay tuition during the year. They were discouraged by their four-year universities from having other jobs. They had to pay housing, food, clothing. And actually, that was a bit of an imposition for me, but I was fortunate and privileged. But for many, this can actually provide a barrier. And so what the governor had suggested is that we offer teachers in their internship in their junior or senior year, whenever they do it, a $20,000 a year stipend, modest to be sure, but it certainly would help them. Of course, you being the committee that you are, you understand the nature of reaches like this. They're expensive. And so a decision was made that we would dial it back a bit and perhaps limit it to colleges where socioeconomic disadvantage was more apparent. And we would let this take place in colleges that had more than 40% of their students receiving Pell Grants. And I thought it was a great idea. One of the vagaries of this program is that if you begin at a 2-year college and you're in the program, you can continue on at a 4-year and then also receive that stipend in your junior or senior year. Unfortunately, the 40% Pell Grant it eliminated all but about 4 or 5 of the community colleges from participating in that. And there were a couple, and I'll name a few: Baltimore County, CCBC in Baltimore County, Prince George's Community College, which serve a very diverse population, but there were many others that didn't qualify under that. So students who started at CBC and were in a teacher ed program and went on to a 4-year wouldn't be eligible for this stipend under the bill. And it seemed to me that students who were going to a community college, at least one, if probably not one of the primary motivations for them to attend that, besides the fact that they give an excellent education, would be financial. So it's reasonable to assume that students who are at community colleges are often the students like those who are in colleges that have a lot of students with Pell Grants who are facing monetary and economic difficulties. And so this bill simply says, look, students who start at any community college, any of the 16 community colleges in the state, when they continue on to their 4-year college and do the program at that 4-year college, they would be eligible for this $20,000 a year stipend when they arrive. So it puts them into a slightly different class and lets them go forward. And so you can take a look at the fiscal note. It's generous and wonderful, and I love it. And so I would just say, please, if you'll take a look at it, if you look into the testimony, you'll first of all see some really heartfelt testimony from Asia Lee, who was a student who was an intern and talked about how difficult it was and how some of her friends had to drop out of the program. But also as important to me is we have support from the governor's office, from the Maryland State Board of Education, from the Maryland State Education Association, as well as, get ready for it, MACO likes this too. So we're in good shape, okay? So with that, I will conclude my testimony and ask you to give a favorable report to this bill.
Thank you for the bill. Any questions for the bill sponsor? Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you. I just want to make clear, you said because of the money that was allotted last year in that bill, that's why there's no fiscal note?
That's right.
Okay.
The program's already up and running. This would probably not put a significant difficulty on it right now. It's a pilot program, by the way. We're only going to do it for 3 years or so and see if it's actually encouraging people into the profession. But I want these students to be part of this pilot program too.
Thank you for the bill. We do have some testimony in favor of the bill. Rhea Gupta, Brad Phillips, and Asia Lee. You all can come on up. Oh, I think everyone, let's do Brad Phillips there since he's here, and then we'll go to our virtual witnesses.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Brad Phillips, and I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges. Picking up on a vibe in the room, I will keep my comments brief. I'll just make 2 points. You've heard the pitch, you understand the issue. Community colleges can do 2 things to help do something about the teacher shortages. Graduates from community colleges tend to live and work and stay in the state of Maryland. They do not leave the state of Maryland. This type of program would really help make sure you retain teachers in the state of Maryland. Second, community colleges are often a reflection of the communities in which they serve. They have diversity, and bringing that diversity into this profession is also a goal of the blueprint legislation and of this body. So by expanding this and allowing community colleges to be a part of the teacher development and retention program, you really do help move the needle on the shortages that you have in the state of Maryland. Thank you so much. With that, I'll happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? This witness. Okay, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
2 virtual witnesses. We'll bring those up here on the screen. Rhea Gupta and Asia Lee. Whoever we get up here first, we can. Hey, looks like Rhea Gupta, welcome.
Hi.
2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and committee members. My name is Rhea Gupta, and I'm the policy researcher with Strong Schools Maryland, here in strong support of House Bill 75. Thank you to Delegate Ebersol for bringing this bill to make an important addition to the teacher development and retention program that increases opportunities and removes barriers to confront the shortage of educators in Maryland. As you know, the Teacher Development and Retention Program supports eligible students by providing well-deserved financial support through a stipend to build their teaching capacity and skills in high-need schools and classrooms in Maryland. This bill simply expands eligibility of this program to include students in all Maryland community colleges, which allows aspiring teachers in community colleges like CCBC and Carroll County College to get the rich in-classroom experience they need while being financially supported, allowing them to enter the teacher pipeline seamlessly. The passage for the Blueprint for Maryland's Future began a new period in Maryland's journey to train, recruit, and retain high-quality, diverse educators, aiming to address our state's teacher shortage and make the teaching profession pipeline more equitable. HB 75 moves us closer to that goal. The proposed legislation will have generational change and aims to shift us from the pattern of being an importer state. Students who have a dream to teach will be able to learn on the job in Maryland, where they'll be able to build up their capacity within the state and become great model teachers, inspiring the next generation of educators in the state. We implore this committee to build Maryland's teaching capacity and to work to elevate the teaching profession and to fulfill the promises of the Blueprint. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 75. Thank you.
Excellent testimony. Thank you. Asia Lee, we'll take questions at the end.
Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Asia Lee. I was a student at the Community College of Baltimore County, or CCBC for short. I graduated this semester with my associate's degree in elementary education, and I am now attending Towson University to receive my bachelor's degree in this area of study. Looking back on my community college experience, I love the experiences and opportunities I was able to partake in. I was a part of the Honors College, a program that offers more rigorous courses and other avenues to succeed academically. I was also featured in the College Tour, a show that provides an inside look into colleges all over the world. And I always wanted to be on TV, so this was a dream come true. I was able to share my love for teaching and what experiences I gained during my time at CCBC. However, one thing I was not able to discuss was my internship during one of my last semesters. I was balancing 5 classes, my student internship, and my job all at the same time. I had to make sacrifices and cut back on days at work in order to fulfill my requirements for the internship. I was stressed and I was anxious about my school workload, my internship assignments and hours, and lesson planning, an outside requirement assigned to me from my mentor. And all of this for free. I was fortunate enough to be living with my parents, who can provide for me and my 2 other sisters. But for many other educators, this is not the case. Last year, you created the Teacher Development and Retention Program, which provides stipends to help future educators continue in their programs and internships. But many students who started at community college would not be able to participate. I want to use this program to speak up for them. I want students after me to find that they don't have to settle for a job or a major that they don't want simply because funding was not allocated for them. I wholeheartedly believe that if you value something, you'll invest in it. And if you value the educators in Maryland, then please say yes to House Bill 75. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Congratulations on your success and perseverance.
Thank you.
It's a great story. Any questions for Ms. Lee or Ms. Gupta? All right, thank you both for being with us and your testimony. Have a great day. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 75. We'll now move to House Bill 92. Delegate Amprey, I believe we passed this bill last year as well, did we not, Delegate Amprey? I do think you have a panel, so if you want to bring them up, let's see, Karen Clark.
Our panel has been reduced. You know, we're gonna keep it nice and short.
Okay,
We
well,
appreciate
they
it.
can just introduce themselves. Thank you, Delegate.
Yep. For the record, Delegate Marlon Amprey here in support of House Bill HB 92, which this committee passed last year. Thank you all so much. The purpose of this bill is to improve the inmate rehabilitation process by increasing inmates' access to facilitating their success in higher education programs. So what the bill does, quick highlight, requires the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to assist incarcerated individuals receiving Pell Grants for higher education. The Maryland Department of Labor will be required to set goals for the number of incarcerated individuals in education programs, establish a tracking system for the number of incarcerated individuals in those education programs, establish a tracking system for the progress of those individuals, and forward the data to the Maryland Higher Education Commission and adopt more regulations to carry this out. The only thing I'll add is that I know we were in a tight year this year with our budget, but I always say that when we invest in our prison population is one of the highest ROIs you can get. As far as reducing recidivism, which reduces how many people have to be incarcerated. We increase those who are educated to go out into society, provide for their families, reducing the need for certain state services. And lastly, we increase the amount of higher tax-paying citizens. So at the end of the day, I think that the opportunity to invest in these individuals is really the best way to get the best return of our investment. So with that said, I ask for your support of this bill, and I'll turn it over to people on my panel.
Chair, Vice Chair, and esteemed members of the Appropriation. I am Derek Whiting, and I'm honored to present favorable testimony on HB 92. As a returning citizen and an appointed member of the Baltimore City State Central Committee, Legislative District, I'm deeply committed to these initiatives with regards to impact justice involved individuals and their families. Reflecting on my personal journey, my Uncle Rodney, he participated in the Maryland Department of Education Correctional Education Program in the 80s and the 90s. From this program, he chose to pursue education while in prison, eventually earning his bachelor's degree. And then subsequently, he earned his master's degree from Compton State University and has not returned to prison since. After my own period of incarceration, I pursued education at the University of Baltimore, majoring in Human Services Administration program. Even though I was not during the time at the University of Baltimore, I became aware of a similar initiative through the United States Department of Education Second Chance Pell Grant Experimental Sites Initiatives. University of Baltimore was among 67 other institutions selected to offer post-secondary correctional education programs through federal Pell Grant funding. This program, situated in Jessup Correctional Institution, aimed to provide education to incarcerated students, reducing the likelihood of recidivism and improving their educational and employment outcomes upon release. While I have personally not have benefited from this program, I actually went through my program self-funded. I bear witness to countless individuals who have the impact of education, education and reentry support is immeasurable, creating pathways to individuals to bear their lives and contribute positively to society. The initiative is crucial in breaking the cycle of recidivism and fostering positive outcomes, especially with regards to this population.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Yes, sir.
And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Stewart. I've formerly been involved with the Corrections Department. I ran the academic education programs for about 20 years of my life. I worked for the state for 30 in education, and before that in public schools. Education reduces recidivism, and it pays for itself several times over. I hope you keep that in mind, because any dollar that's spent for prison education reduces crime and returns $4 or $5 according to the RAND Corporation's pretty definitive study in 2014 and 2018. We had Pell Grants up until 1994, and then they were going. We had 1,000 students in prison and college up till 1994, and then we had this hiatus because there was no state funding. And then, as mentioned earlier, the Pell Grants were restored for in experimental programs, and now they're available. We have 8 to 10 colleges coming in that want to provide programs. 8 to 10 Maryland colleges plus Georgetown University. We have a problem that we don't have enough, possibly not enough students, but we have plenty of programs and plenty of money from Pell Grants. Last year we had 171 GEDs, 2022 I should say, in the Department of Corrections through the Department of Labor programs. And 2 years before that, we had 0 during COVID for each year. And that is compared to back in the 1990s when we had up to 1,000 GEDs a year. So we have a problem here. We have money coming in. We don't have enough students potentially to meet to fill the seats that are going to be available in these programs. So any kind of bill such as REAP that pulls things together and creates an economy is going to help fix this problem. So I wholeheartedly support this bill.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us, and both of you sharing your testimony. Any questions for these witnesses? Delegate Smith, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. Was this bill passed by the Senate last year?
So unfortunately, this bill got stuck in between the halls. So Senate made some adjustments So we separated the bill. Last year, we had a commission that was also with the REAP Act. So this year we've separated. So this bill only has the components around the education. The commission is a separate bill. It got confused and it got caught in the hallway. Literally, the chairman was trying to make it happen literally, we needed 12 more minutes. Like literally, if we had 12 more minutes, we would have got it done. So I appreciate you all's efforts to help me. But this year we separated it, so hopefully we don't have that problem again. And it's been cross-filed, so we hope that won't have that issue.
We'll see if we can get it over a little earlier for you as well.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks
All
for
right,
your
thank you.
testimony. Thanks for being with us. That concludes the bill.
Thank you.
On House Bill 92, House Bill 62, Delegate Simpson. And then we'll go to House Bill 198 and finish up with House Bill 78.
Good afternoon. You all are going late. It's almost like judiciary in here. So thank you very much, Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Chang, and all of you. I appreciate this time to hopefully win over your favorable vote for House Bill 62, which is state employees' rights and protections, personnel actions and harassment, investigation of complaints. What this does is currently the law says that they have to get their investigation done within 30 days. And we are asking, and that's been the way it is since the 90s, we are asking for that to be extended to 60 days with an additional 30 days with permission. And the reason for that is these complaints can balloon into, for example, a sexual harassment complaint that turned out to end up having 4 victims, 3 of which wrote, filed written complaints, and there were over 22 witnesses. Well, there's usually only about 22 days in that 30 days. And also a very extensive report needed to be written. So as you can hear, this is definitely something when we passed the bill last year to extend the time for complainants to file a complaint for a year for personnel issues, 2 years for sexual harassment. Those doing the investigation said, hey, what about us? Can we have more time? And the reason for the permission is, as we know, we've just went through COVID. We understand that sometimes you have, you're planning to meet with a witness and it has to be canceled, that they get sick or something else occurs. So it would allow for that additional time. So I hope all of you will vote favorably for House Bill 62 to give our EEO investigators more time to complete a thorough investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the bill and testimony. Any questions for Delegate Simpson? All right, I don't see any. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now turn to House Bill 198. Chair Corman makes his triumphant return to appropriations. Hey. If you have a panel, bring them on up. That's great. Make sure they introduce themselves so we can mark them off and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, Delegate Smith. I admire your choice in seats. It's good to be with you all. I come before you to present House Bill 198, Maryland Metro funding bill. What better topic to have me back for? As some of you remember, back in 2018, when we passed the so-called dedicated capital funding for WMATA, we included there a 3% annual increase cap on the operating subsidy that the state gives to WMATA. We did that in coordination with our partners in Virginia. Due to a few unforeseen circumstances, that 3% cap has not worked entirely as intended. I will say it's a useful tool, and the bill I have before you keeps that cap. It actually was the idea of the current Transportation Secretary, then the WMATA General Manager, Paul Wiedefeld. But part of the problem is inflation, which of course we're all familiar with, obviously a little bit higher than 3% for a few years there, and that has an effect on WMATA like it does everything else, driving up the cost of, running trains, construction, power, wages, and so forth. And another sort of unforeseen element with the operating cap is at the beginning of COVID, if you can remember back that far, Metro actually received federal assistance before the states did. And so Metro sort of gave back some money to the jurisdictions to try to help them, because at the beginning of COVID, we weren't getting that direct aid, but WMATA was. So WMATA said, well, the states can pay us less because we're getting this direct aid from the federal governments. So that sort of lowered the baseline for WMATA's budget, and we didn't adjust the cap off of the old number. We adjusted off that baseline. So as that aid goes away, that becomes sort of a problem with how the cap operates. So there is a gap between WMATA's, planned budget and the money that they get both in revenue and then in subsidies from the jurisdiction. So to fill that gap, the first step is for them to take care of their own house. And I have WMATA here and they can talk about some of the cuts they're proposing and undertaking to do that, and also raise fares. And on the table is, I believe at this point, a 25% fare increase is what's being proposed for the next fiscal year. I would just say, as someone who, like many of you from Montgomery and Prince George's County and beyond, benefits from the metro system, some cuts are good and necessary, and some cuts are bad. One of the cuts being proposed is to close the 10 lightest used stations. Well, that may sound great, except if you live in Prince George's County, where those stations are disproportionately located. And running turnbacks, turning trains back halfway to the end of the line may sound good until you realize that that means the ends of Montgomery County will not get service, right? They'll get half the service for the same price. And so we want WMATA to tighten its belt. We want them to go at fares. We want them to do service cuts, but we can't expect everything to be done, their entire shortfall to be filled that way. And so we're looking to the jurisdictions to step up. And thankfully, Governor Moore has done so. In his proposed budget, he proposes an additional $150 million next year, and then growing a little bit from there for Maryland's share of filling this gap. We will only do our part if Virginia and DC are doing their part. This is an occasional misconception I hear that Maryland would do more than other jurisdictions. That is not the case. We will be doing it in accordance with the formula that exists between Maryland, Virginia, and DC. We will not be overpaying to help DC and Virginia take care of their problem. The bill before you does not provide the money. The governor's budget is where the money comes from. If you all allow that to go forward, that's up to you when you go through that process. And I know Chair Watson will take a very close look at what they're proposing on transportation. What this bill does is deal with the mechanical limitation on that appropriation, which is that 3% cap. And it does it by basically resetting the 3% cap after the increases come in through the budget, so that we can sort of get over that hump. There is an amendment that I'll send over that will address a few things. One is just fixing the fiscal year that we would rebase at, because Governor Moore has proposed this staged increase. And so we just need to make sure we're using the correct fiscal year, which I believe would be fiscal year 28. We have some legacy language in there that's really no longer effective. So to conform with existing practice, we'll strike that out in the amendment. And then we also have a few important policy issues for the state of Maryland that we think our funding should potentially be contingent on. And so you'll see in the amendment that I send over for your consideration, those are ensuring the board chair of WMATA rotates through the jurisdictions on a more regular basis. The last Maryland WMATA board chair was in 2011, which is, I think, before maybe any of us except Chair Barnes were here. So that's quite a while. Another is making sure that if it's ever operational, that the purple line appear on the WMATA map, that we have no station closures for the reason I stated, which is the disproportionate impact on Prince George's County, and that we not have turnbacks where half the trains don't go to the end of the lines, which is disproportionately bad for the suburban jurisdictions, Virginia and Maryland. So obviously that's all part of a sort of a regional negotiation. If we do something like that, DC and Virginia will state their own priorities. So, we understand it's all part of a negotiation, but I do want to send that over for your consideration. That was a lot of me talking, but as you know, I can go on and on about this topic, but if it's all right, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to turn it over to my panel.
Let's take questions of Delegate Corman first. Any questions for Delegate Corman? Delegate Ivey?
Chairman, I don't think you were in on the little nudge there, but welcome back. Thank
you.
I really appreciate the legislation. And while I'm on the mic, if you don't mind speaking to the possible closures in Prince George's County specifically, if you could speak a moment to that.
Sure. I mean, I'll just say Senator Augustine is much more pleased the crossfire on this. And I know you share a district and he's very clued in on the potential stations. I don't think they've actually publicly announced the list of stations, but it's the 10 lightest used. And so you can do some simple math to figure those out. I will say, ironically, one of those stations is Potomac Yards. And if you followed what's being proposed in Virginia, the station closure thing doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's definitely a problem for Prince George's County, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen.
Thank you for your work on this, sir, and welcome back.
So Delegate Corman, apparently they had the joke plan for freshman members where the whole committee lines up for questions.
Yeah.
What the committee doesn't understand is the joke's on us, because you would like nothing better than 2 hours of a lot of questions. So,
Delegate Rice is going to revive, Mr. Chairman, so.
let's hear from the panel and then we can take actual questions at the end. Welcome.
Who do you want? Go ahead.
Had to decide between WMATA and MDOT who was going to go first. My name is Drew Morrison. I'm the acting director of the Washington Area Transit Office at the Maryland Department of Transportation. We oversee WMATA for the department. Not surprisingly, Delegate Corman has done a great job of articulating the elements of the legislation. We are supportive of this. It is necessary for implementing the governor's proposed fiscal year 2025 budget and key for addressing the policy issues related to the WMATA fiscal year 2025 fiscal cliff. Delegate Corman has raised a number of key policy issues around WMATA service that we are going to continue to work with him and work with WMATA and work with all of you on as we think about how the service evolves in the future, how it meets the needs of Maryland residents as we work through these challenging budget times. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, members of the committee. Charlie Scott here for Metro. And I will try to be as brief as Drew was, but I don't think I can be. But just want to again acknowledge the bill that was passed in 2018, the Metro Transit funding bill, and that has been critical to Metro for returning our system to a state of good repair. Our annual capital program now is over $2 billion, and we've been able to greatly improve customer service reliability on the system. And resulting from that, our customer satisfaction is at its highest levels in years. As Delegate Corman mentioned, that bill also did include this 3% cap that this legislation would suspend until later. And just to give a heads up on where this stands in the region, right now in Richmond, there are similar efforts. Right now, they have budget amendments presented for their 2-year budget that would also increase the Commonwealth funding for the next 2 years, and then also suspend the cap for the next 2 years in Richmond. So we're very pleased to see progress both here in Maryland with Governor Wes Moore's proposal for $150 million for Metro, along with the Commonwealth. And just to give you a sense, our board of directors is expected to pass a proposed budget later this week that will go out to public hearing. As Delegate Corman mentioned, that does include severe service cutbacks, significant fare increases. And what this bill would do would be to allow Maryland and Virginia to increase their funding, go beyond that 3% cap so that we could avoid the service cuts, avoid layoffs of 2,300 members of our staff. So for those reasons, we definitely support this bill and hope for a favorable report. Thank you.
And so, Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, it would not entirely avoid service cuts and it would not entirely avoid fare increases, even with this additional money that is in the governor's budget.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak before you and share Prince George's County's perspective on House Bill 198, the Maryland Metro Funding Act of 2024. For the record, I'm Victor Weisberg, Special Assistant to the Director for Prince George's County's Department of Public Works and Transportation. Prince George's County supports HB 198 for WMATA operating assistance, the Maryland Metro Funding Act of 2024. As Delegate Corman noted, HB 198 would repeal for fiscal year 2025 the requirement that the Maryland Department of Transportation withhold 35% of the state's share of annual operating grants for the Washington Suburban Transit District if the state's operating assistance provided in the approved WMATA budget increases by more than 3% over the total operating assistance provided in the prior fiscal year. It is critical to see WMATA through this passage and enable robust support. Prince George's County has a significant transit-dependent population, among the highest in the region, and therefore the health and vitality of the entire transit network is critical to the larger ecosystem. As the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority is a central part of this essential transportation paradigm, ensuring that the entire network is robust is absolutely critical. Prince George's County strongly supports WMATA in best being able to serve the needs of the region. Central to the county's plans is our recently launched Transit Transformation Initiative. While we're very pleased that the governor in his proposed FY 24-29 budget, should I keep going or wrap it up? Anyway, for the reasons stated, Prince George's County supports robust funding for transit for WMATA and the system as a whole, and requests passage of HB 198. Thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity to come speak to you today. Thanks.
Questions for this panel? Delegate Edelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair Corman and the panel. Question for you is, we're dealing with this issue this year of relieving the cap. I'm curious if your expectation is it's largely due to the unique situation of the federal money that came into Metro versus is it really a symptom of issues like inflation, construction costs, et cetera? And if it's the latter, does that mean we're going to be back here next year, potentially having to do the same thing? And if so, is there a more long-term fix that we can look to? And two, while it is excellent that the money is there this year in the governor's budget, there's no guarantee that the money is going to be there long-term. And so I guess the question is, how do we ensure that WMATA is appropriately funded in the long term, especially considering the overwhelming majority of Metro employees are Maryland residents?
Thanks for the question, Delegate Edelson. Yeah, I mean, first on the latter, clearly we have a larger scale problem. It's not just WMATA, but I could go around this room and name everybody's favorite transportation project and the challenge that the port is facing in Delegate Metzger's district and Up County 270 North and Delegate Acevero's district. And all of those things are under stress because of the state of the budget. And so WMATA is a part of that. And I think you'll see me again, maybe not in this committee, but in other places talking about some of those larger scale solutions. In terms of the appropriateness of the 3% cap, I do think it is a little bit of an issue about whether 3% is the right number or the right thing we should be using. And I know, others have talked about should we be switching to some sort of more movable measure of inflation, right? So that when inflation goes up, we have, we're using CPI or something. It's a regional negotiation. We've had a lot of conversations about this with our partners in DC and Virginia. And right now people seem to want to stick with the 3% concept. I cannot promise that I won't find some reason to weasel my way back into appropriations to testify about some future bill that does adjust that if there's a regional evolution on that topic. But right now, 3% is where our partners in the Commonwealth are. And so we're sticking with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, at least I'm gonna miss you in our committee, Delegate Corman. I don't know if you guys remember the joke a couple of years ago was sort of the yin and the yang, and we had this sort of mutual banter between the two of us. And I don't know that Delegate Watson and I are gonna have that or not, but we can certainly try. But no, in this particular situation, I don't know that anybody across the state, wants to see WMATA or the Metro be dissolved or have any, fiscal cliff or anything, draconian happen to it. And I think we can all certainly support the continuity of that. And I think it's encouraging that that you guys are taking an honest approach here, both. And usually I'm not going to support revenues, but in this case, if we're going to do fare increases, that's something I can get on board with, and I'm happy to hear that. And so this might be I tried a more holistic approach. Thank you.
Isn't that so?
Questions today that aren't questions. So I just want to reiterate. We have to have questions. I don't want to be rude to you, but I will start shutting that down. Delegate Grace. Delegate Solomon, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I clearly drew the short straw getting to sit next to Delegate Grice for the rest of this session. Mr. Chair.
I'm happy and I love you there.
So I wanted to ask Charlie a couple of questions from the Metro perspective, and I appreciate the whole panel being here. And actually, before I get to Charlie, Drew, I do want to say, because I think we have to say it, and it's been mentioned a little bit, but you are the other administration representative here. To channel the chair's comments, this is a Band-Aid over a gaping wound. It's a Band-Aid, not a bridge. And obviously, to Chair Corman's comments, this $150 million still means that Metro is likely going to have to do some sort of cuts or delay infrastructure, delay state of good repair, which just makes it more expensive to do it down the road. So well, it's not your decision as much as you can take back to the administration. We need a holistic fix. And we want to be partners with you on that. So Charlie, just questions for you. You know, the Delegate Corman mentioned the turnbacks and the closure of stations. There's 2 turnbacks actually in my district, Grosvenor and Wheaton, as you know, and I vividly remember being at the Wheaton press conference where we announced the end of the Wheaton turnback, which is a huge deal for that side of the red line. Can you tell me whether it's, you know, something you all want to do, the other red line, whether it's something you would want to do to eliminate those turnbacks to reduce service in Montgomery County or to close stations to reduce service to our colleagues and communities in Prince George's County?
Thank you, Delegate Solomon. So I think we all know that we don't want the budget to be dictating service cuts. So we want the flexibility with the funding from the jurisdictions to be able to develop the service plan that meets the region's needs. So when it comes down to specifically, you know, the red line, and that's been almost a perennial topic. I feel like Maryland has done a good job of directing its board members to express Montgomery County's interest there. Overall, I have not seen before any legislative body sort of weigh in on service plans. So I think it's the healthy way to do it is to have the board members, you know, definitely hear from legislators, hear from the county councils, and then weigh in at the board level with the interest from the jurisdictions. That's kind of how it works. But definitely, we do want to work with Maryland on the service plan that we would implement and welcome any feedback.
And then the last question that I would have for you is, so obviously the formula for funding is based around service. And so if you all were to dramatically scale back service and in the decisions within the agency to change the service specifically to Maryland, do you think it would be reasonable for us to then say, if you were reducing the service to Maryland, we shouldn't be paying for service that we're not getting?
Yes, I understand the question. And actually, last year, our board adopted a strategic plan for the authority. And one of the goals in that plan is actually to update the formulas that we use for both the bus and the rail modes. On the rail side, it is basically the same formula we opened with, you know, almost 50 years ago. So definitely looking at the level of service provided in each jurisdiction is one of the factors that we're looking at, and we'll be taking that back to the region.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Corman. Good to see you in the committee. My questions for WMATA Charlie, specifically around, I mean, we know that WMATA is really, I think it's the only regional transit system that doesn't have dedicated funding. Has WMATA looked at alternatives for regional funding of WMATA well into the future? Is that something that the board, you all are discussing? But then also, and that's the first question. The second is around like organizational. Are you all looking at what kind of a waste within WMATA that quite frankly could be addressed? I know waste is, you know, something that has been an issue for some years. So are you all looking at both internally what you all are doing, but also is the board, is the administration looking at ways to sustainably fund this in a regional way in the future?
Yes, thank you, Delegate. So to your second question, our general manager came in, you know, just over a year ago, and one of his charges that he charged his executive team with was identifying any efficiencies that we can find within our current budget. So he announced, of course, the $750 million shortfall that we were facing. And he said, no matter what, we are going to find $50 million internally without affecting service to address that portion of it. And that's a stretch to come up with that 50 million, but that is one of the initiatives ongoing for our next fiscal year budget. And in terms of, you know, recognizing the, any regional opportunities, I think our budget situation right now, I think, has ratcheted up the level of discussion around the region, recognizing that, as has been mentioned, that, you know, this funding is essential to get us through the next couple of years, but ultimately there is a recognition that we need a dedicated source of revenue. So I think there is more recognition of that within the region. That would, of course, require probably compact change, you know, more regional, you know, collaboration to figure out how that would work, but I think there is more recognition that that's needed.
Yeah, and real quick, Mr. Chair. So would definitely be interested in finding out more about that. And as was mentioned, a good bit of WMATA's employees are Maryland residents, some of our constituents as well. And so from an organizational standpoint, the employees, the workers, and the cuts that you all are making that impact those workers and ultimately, you know, our constituents, et cetera. If folks are taking that into consideration as well, vis-a-vis, let's say, management pay or up management pay, et cetera, and the folks who are running it. So I hope that's also being considered as well when we talk about inefficiencies.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Chair, and it's great to see Delegate Corman. We've always had a great relationship, talking. Question I have is when you talk about the increases in the fares, have you thought about doing increases incrementally? In other words, over a period of time. We did that here with the tolls on the tunnels. Like 1 year it went 25 cents, and 6 months later it went up another quarter, whatever. But have you thought about that to raise the funds?
I don't think they usually do staged increases historically when it comes to these increases. I will mention, what's the name of the new program for low income? Metro Lift. Yeah, so I do want to lift up Metro Lift, which is a new program they have where I think food stamp recipients get discounts. The beauty of the Smart Trip card, which is like the Charm City card, is that you know, you get a lot more information about people and give people discounts. So that's one way Metro is trying to sort of decrease the burden that fare increases might have. Fare increases are necessary even with this additional money, but one way to try to minimize that burden is by making sure this Metro Lift program is really expanded and people know about it. So for those of you who have constituents who use Metro, please make sure they know that this is available to them so they can get discounted Metro fares.
We'll work together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just thinking, we have a lot of Slocum signs on our transit system up in Harford County. He's advertising, you know, he's, you know, I have gotten over. Do you guys do that on the Metro, that you could maybe get some funds infused by different advertisements? I haven't been on the Metro in a long time.
Absolutely. We advertise both on our buses, which of course are good, you know, rolling billboards, and then also in the rail system.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you to this panel, and Delegate Corman, thanks for your leadership as a Prince Georgian and somebody's constituents are served by WMATA on this issue for the past 10 years. We appreciate you. And on a personal level, even though we've upgraded it, Transportation Chair, we're still going to miss you. So
come visit.
Have a great day. Thanks. We have a few more members of the panel here. Al McColgan, Donna Edwards, Matthew Girardi.
Hello, my name is not Donna Edwards. I mistakenly signed up for multiple things today under her name. I apologize. My name is Brian Wyville with the Maryland State and DC AFL-CIO. I'm here today to just raise a couple of points and seek your apologies for being the wrong person. But I'm here today to obviously emphasize the fact that WMATA is an economic engine of the metropolitan Washington area. It's already been said multiple times, but thousands upon thousands, probably just short of 10,000 ATU 689 members that help power the WMATA system live within the state of Maryland. They are not only good workers, but good consumers, good taxpayers. And the good thing that I'm happy and proud to say is that many of these jobs are well-paying, truly middle-class jobs that are able to sustain a family with family-sustaining wages. So I would highlight that. I would additionally highlight all of the concerns that others have raised about long-term funding challenges for the agency, and that a simple change, though we strongly support the bill, a simple change to when the reset for the cap is kicked back into place will not handle the long-term necessary funding for what should be a growing transit system. I would would add additionally that under the most recent general manager, there has been a beautiful return to what I would call to as build it, if you build it, they will come type of system, where by running expanded service, by running more frequent service, we have watched as the agency has been able to see a recovery that has outpaced many of its other transit system. I don't want to call them rivals because that's hardly an adversarial relationship, but it has been doing a great job at bringing people back to the system. And I would highlight that that has been because they are running more frequent service. If we do not have the funding for the agency, you could watch the beginning of a transit death spiral. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I guess Chairman Barnes, but he left. Committee members and staff, my name is Kyle McColgan and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Policy at the Greater Washington Board of Trade. We are a pro-business, nonpartisan organization supporting all industry sectors in the District of Columbia, suburban Maryland, and Northern Virginia, having done so for the last 134 years. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in front of you all today in support of HB 198, the Metro Funding Act of 2024. I would like to thank Delegate Corman for introducing the legislation and the Moore-Millard administration for already including an additional $150 million in their proposed budget for WMATA. The Board of Trade is committed to the long-term viability of the Metro system, which serves as a region's most critical asset for equitable economic growth and mobility. It is a key factor in attracting both private sector investment as well as growing and retaining our region's very talented workforce. Safe, reliable, and frequent transit service is central to the health and long-term growth of our regional economy. This has been mentioned previously, but WMATA is facing a significant budget shortfall. We will say that's not unique. Most major transit systems throughout the country are facing similar budgetary challenges in a post-pandemic world. WMATA does, however, have unique long-standing challenges due to its multi-jurisdictional nature and the establishment without a dedicated source of funding. This, combined with the federal workforce, which has not returned to the office, the conclusion of federal COVID relief funding, the suspension of the 3% increase of the jurisdictional subsidy credit for 2 years during the pandemic, and the growing cost of providing current levels of service has resulted in WMATA's current financial position and necessity for this legislation. WMATA, as noted, has taken significant steps on their own to rectify the situation, which we believe they will continue to do so. With that being said, this region's population is expected to grow by 1.5 million people by 2050. Without a safe, reliable public transit system, there's no way this region will be successful. Thank you.
Good afternoon all, Chair Barnes in absentia. My name is Matthew Girardi. I'm the Political and Communications Director for ATU Local 689. ATU Local 689 strongly supports HB 198 and urges this committee to issue a favorable report. This bill is a necessary measure for ensuring stability of the state of Maryland and the whole Washington, D.C. metropolitan region by allowing for necessary funds to flow to WMATA. At Local 689, we represent over 9,000 hardworking WMATA employees. Even as our region has faced unprecedented challenges over the past few years, transit workers have faithfully stayed on the job and kept our region afloat. They showed up every day during the worst pandemic in a century. Additionally, they have endured increases in violence both towards themselves and their riders. They are friends, neighbors, and pillars of the community around this region. However, these frontline heroes today are in danger. Going into fiscal year 2025, as stated, Metro has stated that it faces an estimated $750 million gap. Should that need go unmet, proposals have been floated where 108 of 135 Metro bus routes would be eliminated or cut, where Metro Rail would run less frequently and less often with entire stations being shuttered, where fares would increase 25%, and where over 2,300 full-time jobs would be cut, included highly demanded CDL drivers and Metro Transit police. Let me be clear, it would be beyond cruel to have our members repaid for all their hard work with pink slips, worthless healthcare, and stolen retirements. Metro's stated budget gap has developed because the model it had run pre-COVID-19 is not working. Since early 2020, ridership has decreased across all mass transit. Although numbers are trending in the right direction, fare revenues have not returned to the levels they were at in 2019. Moreover, historic inflation has pushed up costs and emergency federal funding infusions had papered over the structural deficit are set to run out. This bill is a common sense adjustment to lift the 3% cap in growth in operating expenditures to allow for the $150 million wisely requested by Governor Moore to flow to Metro. The 3% cap has not worked for a variety of reasons. A transit agency must be able to meet operating expenses at or above the level of inflation to maintain the same level of service each year. COVID-related inflation meant that effectively.
Time's up.
Thank you. We urge this committee to issue a favorable report. We thank Delegate Corman for introducing this measure.
Correct. Thank you very much. Take questions from the committee. Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Can you go over that number again, gentlemen from the AFL-CIO? What was the number you said of employees at WMATA, or maybe I misheard?
At WMATA, ATU 689 has north of 9,000 members. As far as ATU 689 members in Maryland, you're probably talking just shy of 10,000.
So just so I understand, just at WMATA alone, there's over 9,000 employees there.
At WMATA, I believe they have something like 15,000 employees.
They're about 12.
It's 12 to 15. Someone probably has a more accurate number than me, but somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next committee has a question from Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I guess one of the cruel things as well is if we continue down the road, is that we have a lot of people, a majority of Marylanders don't use the system. And if they have to help subsidize it, it's not fair to them, and that's the argument that we come back every single year. The best solution for all of us is to be at 100% usage, to get that ridership back. Is there any data out there, post-COVID where federal workers are coming back to work? I mean, is there any light at the end of the tunnel that you guys are seeing about any trends where folks are going to start using it? Is it, and how far out are we, if there are trends, how far out are we looking?
I can't tell you the exact trends for what the numbers are showing, but in terms of Metro Rail ridership, I believe 40% of it was federal workers in 2019. As of the latest data we had, that was at 14%. We had heard from the administration that just recently, they're requiring all federal departments to report back and say what their exact plans are for a transition back into the office. I can also tell you that one thing that we have communicated to the federal government is that we are asking for them to take their federal worker transit benefit, which used to be $300 a month. A lot of those benefits are just being left on the table. As all of you may know, the federal government has not been paying operating assistance, even though its historical excuse, frankly, to the rest of the compact partners has been, well, we give our workers this benefit, they use it in fares, that goes back into our operating budget. Our ask of them is, look, flex some of these unused funds back into direct operating assistance. Our back of the envelope calculations were that would be close to $350 million annually that we're looking at there. That's something that OMB should be doing. That's something that we support.
That's twice the subsidy.
Yeah, that's twice what we're looking at in terms of talking about even what Governor Moore put in. So we completely support that, but we need a short-term bridge to get us there.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for the committee for this panel? Thank you very much, Mr. Girardi, Mr. Colgan, Mr. Weibel for being here. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 198. Thank you very much, Chairman Corman, for being here. Next, the committee will move on to House Bill 78 as departmental bill in Maryland Environmental Service Governance and Requirements. And this afternoon, joining us from the Environment and Transportation Committee, we have Delegates Stein, Delegate Love, and Delegate Morning joining us. So Morgan, so thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for being here. Please proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chang. Good afternoon to members of the both committees. It's great to be here. For the record, my name is Dr. Charles Glass. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Environmental Service. I come here today to present you House Bill 78, MES's only departmental bill this session. We don't promulgate a lot of bills traditionally. We're just proposing several technical changes to MES's statute. We've organized them in this presentation just in governance and board of directors, legal, contractual, and reporting requirements. So first, governance and board of directors. We are proposing to reduce the minimum threshold required to achieve a quorum. The change of approve would allow for 4 members of the board to reach a quorum over the current threshold, under the current threshold of 5 out of 7 voting members. So a traditional quorum. Delegation of responsibilities for board secretary. This would authorize the board to allow for the delegation of certain responsibilities to an employee of MES. This is the same language that exists in other parts of the statute in terms of the board treasurer. So just allowing a staff person to do some of the work of the board secretary. Legal and contractual. This is what first is just a definition of municipality. This provision would expand the definition of municipality in MES's governing statute to also include the District of Columbia and federal entities. The majority of our funding is through state and local governments, state and counties. However, we do have a small portion of work in DC supporting environmental benefits in DC that also support improvement of the Bay. And other federal entities, we do work with EPA Region 3 and US EPA headquarters. And the second legal contractual is proposal versus contract. You may or may not know anyone can request, any jurisdiction, and even a private person can request an environmental project of MES, and we are required right now to write a contract. So we are served by the Attorney General's office. If someone asks for a request, they ask for us to write a contract. It's more difficult than just giving them a proposal for a quote. So our request is that we would change this to proposal instead of contract. And then finally, in reporting requirements, MES has several reporting requirements in its statute. We are asking to combine 2 of them, both with different ambiguous due dates, into one report and one due date. So we have an annual financial audit. Current law is to be due as soon as practical after the close of the fiscal year. It's an independent audit. And then our annual report. Current law is it's due within the first 90 days of each fiscal year. Make a report of its activities for the preceding fiscal year. Each such report shall set forth the complete operating and financial statement covering the services activities during such year. Over the last several years, we've included the independent financial audit with our annual report to fulfill the requirement to include a complete operating and financial statement. We propose to clarify this discrepancy by requiring both of these to be due at the end of year fiscal audit and annual report to be submitted to the Governor and the General Assembly no later than October 31st. Item 2 in this section of reporting requirements is, as a part of the MES Reform Act, requirement was placed on MES to procure a separate financial audit for unauthorized spending, misallocated expenses, lack of conformity with state law or board policies, and other accounting errors. MES completed this audit in May of 2022. During the 2023 session, the Department of Legislative Service advised MES that they interpreted this provision as being a one-time audit requirement. Consequently, MES proposes removing this from statute as it is no longer needed. And all of these incur no fiscal impact to the state of Maryland. We're not directly appropriated, but we do a lot of work for state agencies. That concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Glass, for the presentation of the bill. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Delegate Metzger.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. What I'm hearing and clarify, this is more technical changes, more inter-office kind of things.
These are all things that improve our efficiency.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, this is just operational. You know, we're an operational agency. This is just to improve our efficiency. There have been times when, because of conflicts of a board member and an absence of a board member, we did unfortunately have a board member pass away last year. So it impeded, we had to cancel moving forward on some procurement items and then have another meeting when everyone could get together again. So things like that.
I just see nothing but technical changes. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much, Delegate Metzger. We have a question from a member of the Environment and Transportation Committee, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. With respect to the last piece that you mentioned, the audit that was conducted in 2022 regarding unauthorized spending and other misallocated expenses, could you tell us what that audit found?
Oh, so, back in 2020, I called for that same audit in 2020. And there were several in audit language exemptions found. I could get you the report and give you the direct number. When this audit was done, there were some that were found that were related to MES used to have a 5-day travel expense reimbursement policy. That is even more onerous than other state agencies I've worked for. So we moved it to 30 days. And now we really don't have those exemptions. So we got our exemptions down to, in essence, 0. And as everything's been moving forward. On top of that, if you don't know, myself as executive director and the deputy director, every board meeting, every month, we present all expenses. It's something that was also started before the statute happened, and we just continued with the process. So we're very transparent in every dollar we spend.
One follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in addition to your presenting your expenses to the board, was it your testimony that the things included in this paragraph are already included in the other financial statements?
So this is more of a, this requirement was for the independent auditor to go through every single expense. And that's just, that detail of an audit isn't normal. For every single transactions, millions of transactions, I believe, as far as expenses and purchases. So then they started doing pieces, but we already have a general annual audit by RSM. We have all of our federal grants are audited by RSM, and we have another single audit. And then DLS also comes on a triennial basis. So yes, we have a lot of different audits.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Delegate Love. Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee or the Environment and Transportation Committee for Dr. Glass regarding House Bill 78? Great. Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 78. Just a couple quick announcements. Tomorrow we have subcommittee hearings, and the next time we'll get together as a full committee is next week. And on behalf of the Appropriations Committee Chairman Ben Barnes, thank you everyone for participating today. Have a great evening. Thanks.